Hello, my name is Bason. I'm the CEO of the Danish Design Center. We work to activate the methods and the mindsets of designers to enable organizations, both companies and public organizations, to create new innovations, services, products, and business models. I'd like to talk a bit with you about the SDG and the Sustainable Development Goal number 11, which has got to do with our urban future and the development of cities. As is pretty well known, the global population is increasingly moving to cities, away from rural areas and into increasingly mega cities. We know that in not very many years, by 2050, more than half of the population of the planet will be living in cities. And so that puts a new pressure on everything from infrastructure, energy systems, food provision and food systems, mobility, traffic, communications infrastructure, and it really transforms the structure of our societies. So when it comes to the SDG number 11, the question becomes, how can we begin to work with the different goals and achieve more inclusive, more sustainable, more livable cities? The way we look at it is that when we think about the cities of the future, a lot of people are thinking about technology, about creating smarter cities, about engineering solutions. But when you come from a design perspective, you would say, let's start with people, let's start with human beings, let's start with what is attractive, what is meaningful, what is livability, what is quality of life in an urban environment. And actually, you'd also ask yourself, what is quality of life in the future in non-urban environments, also in the rural areas. Some of the objectives around this goal have got to do with how we build and how we create the construction and the buildings of the future. And I'd like to give an example around how we work with that. So we are undertaking a project called the Circular Construction Challenge. It is a project funded by Realdania, which is a philanthropy that engages dozens of companies, architects, designers, engineers in exploring how to take construction materials from buildings and reuse them, and what we say is upcycle them for new types of usages. So the idea is to invite a lot of companies to compete in a challenge program, which means that they are selected by an expert committee first to be part of the competition, and then over time they're competing to provide the best pitches, the best solutions, down to a few finalists, and finally some winners would receive a cash award to develop their solution further. To give some examples, what if you could build buildings in the future out of fungi, which is really this organic material you know from mushrooms, but actually can make fungi into and design that into building materials. Or what if you can use recycled tiles and old stone to create beautifully architecturally created sheds for your garden or for the communal space? Just to give two examples. So the idea of circular construction means taking all the waste, and it's one of the most wasteful sectors in the world is the construction industry, and reusing the waste, as well as thinking about how when we build new homes and new houses and new buildings, how can we make them easy to disassemble and reuse again? Another example on how to address the question of our urban future is to not allow technology to drive only how we create smarter solutions in cities using apps, using data, using sensors in our cities, but always to think about people first. So we have worked with Greater Copenhagen, the area around the capital region in Denmark, to understand people's needs when it comes to creating a smarter city. That could be about understanding how people move in traffic, how they take their car from their home to their work, understanding their needs in traffic and how to make that easier and smarter, also including collective and mass transportation. Or it could be to understand how older citizens are using technology to improve their lives on a daily level in their homes, and starting to understand how can we improve lives through technology, for example, smarter hearing aids or smarter provision of a radio that's easy to listen to if you have a bad of hearing. Finally, I'd like to mention a last example of reversing the idea of urbanization. So of course we see most people living in cities in the future, but what about those living in rural areas? And for some rural areas, how could you change the flow of people so that young people, for example, find it attractive to live outside of the city in a rural area? And so we're working with a local government to explore how could mobile technology, so autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars, if you will, or maybe self-driving buses, how could a way to share transportation in new collaborative models of sharing, and maybe it could be older citizens driving younger people to their schools and to their places of work. How could those be models that means it becomes more attractive to live in an urban area, a rural area, and to see that you have a future there as a young person, and maybe even make it so attractive to be in a rural area that people from the cities will move there because it's easy to get around, and there's maybe more of a social connectivity and social collaboration between people outside of the city. So to conclude, we know that most people on the planet will be living in cities in the near future. We know there's a huge flow of people, which means putting pressure on resources, on infrastructure. But there are ways in which we can design better solutions that are driven by our focus on human needs, on inclusivity, on collaboration, and not first and foremost on technology.